Hello, this is Pastor Manny, welcoming you to the Beacon of Hope podcast. Today I'm bringing you the 14th in our series, For Such a Time as This, episodes in Esther. The first in this series was episode number 158, which was recorded back on November 17th of 2020. Today's segment will bring us to this interesting subject, Esther's second plea. I'll explain to you about that title to it in just a moment, but it comes from Esther chapter 8. Of course, at this time, Haman, the hater of the Jews, wicked man, has been hanged on the same gallows that he had built in order to kill godly Mordecai. And always those who would put their hand against God's people, and more specifically, those who would put their hands against the Jewish people, always suffer the curse and the calamity of God coming upon them. God protects his people. And Haman's been hanged, but yet there's still great danger because there are edicts that have been put out with the strength and authority of the king's ring and his authority behind them. And those edicts which have gone out are still in place. And what's coming up is a wholesale attack by the people within the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, that they're allowed and even encouraged by the officials to attack the Jewish people, do whatever they want to them physically, up to and including killing them, and then take whatever they want of the Jews, loot their stores, take their personal property and such. And all this is still in place, even though Haman has been hanged. And so that's the condition we join this in as we begin in chapter 8. It says, on that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. Now, you understand when he says house, in American terms, we tend to think of a building where a family or maybe more than one family would live. But the house of Ahasuerus includes all the properties, all the authority, all the resources, all the money he had. And the house of Haman was quite a large holding. He was a very wealthy man, very well established in the kingdom, had a lot of influence. And so when Esther was given the house of Haman, she was given all his servants. What was given to her was all his properties, all his possessions, any businesses he had, all that became hers. And so that was turned over to her. And it says, I begin reading again, on that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews' enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. So now Esther reveals that Mordecai is her cousin and the man that raised her, as a father would raise a daughter. And Esther spake yet again before the king and fell down at his feet. Now I will tell you something here, and it's the way I read this and what I believe it shows. If you disagree with it, I wouldn't be aggravated at you over that, but the whole scenario here seems to be a replaying of that first time that Esther had come before the king unbidden. You remember when she came and asked for her life to be spared and that sort of thing. Well, it led to her asking for her life to be spared. She was told by Mordecai she should go in before the king and plead for herself and for her people. And she was hesitant to do so. And the reason why is, as she accurately pointed out, if you went into the king without being asked to come to the king, and if he did not extend a golden scepter, that staff that he had, that very ornate staff that he had, that was a symbol of the authority of his kingdom, if he did not extend that scepter toward you, then you were executed immediately. And of course, Esther reached the point where she had asked for the people to pray and fast, and she would pray and fast, and then she said, I'm going to go in, and if I perish, I perish. And of course, she was granted favor in his sight. Now you have the same type of scenario. It seems that Esther went in unbidden once again. I wouldn't argue with somebody about that, but the evidence is pretty strong here. And remember that her people are not yet safe because of what Haman's already put in place. So I pick up the reading again and looking at it through that view, see what it says here. It says, "And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews," those edicts he had sent out. "Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king." See, it seems to be a replay of what we had read earlier. I believe that Esther took her life into her hands once again on behalf of her people. "And said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?" Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you," in other words, wherever you want to write, "in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse." So what was happening here, although Ahasuerus was a powerful king, the way that the kingdoms of the Medes and Persians, the Medo-Persian kingdom, the way they operated was that once a law was officially put into place by the signature or the king's ring being stamped upon it, not even the king could change that and go back on it. That's exactly what King Darius ran into in the book of Daniel. Remember, King Darius really loved Daniel, but the other men in the kingdom that were in leadership in the kingdom were envious of Daniel and did not want Daniel to be in the position he was in. And so they had set up a scenario where Daniel ended up being brought to a point where he would break the king's commandment, because he either had to quit praying to God or break the king's commandment. And of course, Daniel kept praying to God. Well, in that law, it was said that whosoever didn't pray to another god besides the king for 30 days would be cast into the den of lions. Well, once Darius realized he had been deceived by his own rulers and advisors, that they had played on his own pride, and because of Darius's own foolish pride, wanting people to be reverential and worshipful towards him, he had enacted a law which was going to guarantee the execution of his best man in his kingdom. Darius was so upset that he stayed awake all night, and he got every lawyer he could in the kingdom on this, and they found out that even the king couldn't change the law. Wouldn't it be wonderful in America if our leaders actually lived in such a way where they realized they were not above the law? But that's a side thought. Let me give you the couple of verses out of the book of Daniel that pertain to this. Here's what, when Darius wanted to release Daniel, here's what those who had tricked him into signing this law said. Daniel 6:8 says this, "Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not." That's when they were enacting the law. Now when they come and want, and Darius is wanting to pardon Daniel, they say, "Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree, that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast in the den of lions?" The king answered and said, "The thing is true according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not." Then they dropped the bombshell on him and told him that Daniel had broken that law. And of course, Daniel got thrown into the den of lions, but God was already there. And before long, those men ended up in the den of lions. But that's another account in the Bible. Well, that's what was going on here with Ahasuerus and this massive 127 province kingdom, is the fact that he tells Esther, Mordecai, okay, I'll let you write whatever letters you want. I'll let you put out, an edict, whatever you want to say, and you can take my ring and sign it. But I want you to understand something, Esther. I can't grant your request and go back and change what has already been done, because even the king can't change this. And so here they are in an intractable situation, as it were. And so verse 9, it continues. It says, then were the king's scribes, those are the people who wrote things and did documents for him. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and to the lieutenants and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language. So this thing's getting interpreted out. And to the Jews according to their writing and according to their language, Hebrew. He wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name and sealed it with the king's ring and sent letters by post on horseback and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together so they can organize, and to stand for their life so they can defend themselves, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them. In other words, they were supposed to defend themselves, and they were allowed to organize and get prepared to defend themselves against these people, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for prey. So what they were allowed to do, they were allowed to defend themselves, and then they could take whatever those people who had come to destroy them, whatever they owned. That's what they were going to do. This went out into 127 provinces as fast as was physically possible at that time, in all these different ways. Pony Express, Muleback Express, Dromedary Express, all these different ways that it went out. And I thought of this verse with it. In Ecclesiastes 8 verse 4, it says this: where the word of a king is, there is power. And so this powerful thing went out into the kingdom. Why? Because God's people, the Jews, are still in grave danger. And so that's the end of today's episode. And I invite you to join us on the next one, which will be actually entitled The Rise of Mordecai. If you want to prepare for that one, we'll be in Esther chapter 8 and verses 15 through 17. And also, we will jump and go to Esther chapter 10, Esther 8 verses 15 through 17, and Esther chapter 10 will be for the next publication. God bless you, and may you have a great day.